Now, it's fair to say that a lot of my criticism of modern entertainment tends to stem from the vandalisation of established franchises and legacy characters, the aggressive insertion of unnecessary and patronising political lectures into what are supposed to be escapist fantasy stories, and the outright demonisation of long-time fans who dare to question any aspect of those things. But don't worry, dear viewer, there's plenty of other reasons to hate on films today. Like Moonfall, for example, which is without a doubt one of the dumbest movies I've seen in my entire adult life. And that's saying something, believe me. In fact, the only reason I even watched this fucking thing is because I was on a long-haul flight back from the States, the in-flight entertainment system was fucked, and it was a choice between this or Death on the Nile. And to this day, I still regret my decision. Moonfall is basically a ridiculous conglomeration of unimaginative action sequences and weak CGI, strung along by mortified actors who are far too good for this shite, slogging through the barest suggestion of a plot, and culminating in one of the most bizarre and ridiculous finales since Game of Thrones.
Who better to lead us into the future?
In short, it's a shit film made by a shit director who burned through the last of his creative energy more than a decade ago. But hey, it's still fun to point and laugh at it, so let's get cracking, shall we? Moonfall kicks off with a space shuttle mission to repair a damaged satellite in orbit, the highlight of which is Patrick Wilson singing Africa by Toto and debating the meaning of the lyrics.
I missed a break down in Africa.
In space, no one can hear you cringe. Oh yeah, and Halle Berry's there too because I guess she really needed the paycheck. But oh no, suddenly a swarm of black nanobot things come flying out of nowhere, kills one of the astronauts, knocks out Halle Berry and disables the shuttle's electrical systems. Sounds bad indeed, but somehow Patrick Wilson manages to get back on board, pilot the shuttle back through the Earth's atmosphere and successfully execute a perfect 10 out of 10 landing. By hand, with no instruments. Because that's a thing you can totally do. At first he's hailed as a hero for saving the mission, but when he tries to tell everyone about the black nanobot things, he's ridiculed as a crazy person and dismissed from NASA. And for some reason, he's then made a scapegoat for the entire thing.
Boy, that escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand fast.
Flash forward 10 years or so, and Patrick Wilson is pretty much a drunken burnout now, divorced and estranged from his son. Finally, a protagonist I can relate to. Also, I love how everyone looks exactly the same despite being 10 years older. I mean, Jesus, Mark Ruffalo's aged about a quarter of a century in that time. Oh well, that's what being an insufferable twat does for you, I suppose. Anyway, everything changes one day when he's approached by Samwell Tarly. And yeah, I know his character's got a name in this movie, but since he's basically playing the exact same person from Game of Thrones, I'm just gonna call him what he is. So Sam Tarly explains that the moon is drifting out of orbit and moving closer to Earth, and he reckons it's because it's an alien megastructure coming to destroy us. So Patrick Wilson does the smart thing and tells him to fuck off. But then NASA reaches the same conclusion all by themselves, which kinda begs the question of why the script felt the need to do the same thing twice, but whatever. So they send up a mission to the moon to figure out what's wrong, but then the nanobots show up again and blow it up. So the NASA director's like, well, I'm out of ideas, see you later. That's fucking commitment right there. Meanwhile, things are getting bad on Earth. As the moon drifts closer, its gravity starts fucking with the planet, causing earthquakes, tidal waves, meteor showers, and atmospheric disturbances. So basically all the stuff from every previous Roland Emmerich movie rolled into one then. But it's okay because Halle Berry discovers an EMP device developed decades ago to combat the nanobot swarm, because it turns out the US government has known about this shit since the Apollo moon landings. But then they decided to cut the program for budgetary reasons. Fucking really? An existential threat from a highly advanced alien species, but you'd rather spend money on diversity and inclusion officers than developing countermeasures to save the entire world? Actually, that sounds suspiciously accurate now that I think about it. So with the EMP device reactivated, their plan is clear. Grab themselves a retired space shuttle out of a museum, because that's a thing that audiences will probably recognise, fly it up to the moon manually so the swarm doesn't detect them, plant the EMP device and use it to disable the nanobots forever. And then hope that everything somehow goes back to normal.
How's that for a slice of fried gold?
Yeah, boy!
So they get to the moon and set up the EMP, but oh no, the swarm doesn't take the bait. So there's a chase scene and then they get inside the moon, which turns out to be a giant computer system, which then explains to Patrick Wilson what's actually going on here. See, it turns out that billions of years ago, humanity was a peaceful intergalactic empire that developed artificial intelligence to basically run everything for them. Nice one, can't see that ever going wrong. But would you believe it? It all went wrong. The AI went rogue and declared war on them, and the moon was developed as a kind of contingency plan to repopulate the galaxy once the war was over. Using a nice friendly AI which apparently doesn't go rogue despite being left on its own for billions of years to contemplate its mission and the nature of its own existence. Why? So the rest of the plot could happen. But oh no, the bad AI tracked it down 10 years ago during the failed shuttle mission, and it's been fucking around with it ever since, which is why the moon's now on a collision course with Earth. Now there's only one option left. Sacrifice one of the team to lure the bad AI away so that they can detonate the EMP and allow the good friendly AI to get the moon back to its normal orbits. So there's another chase scene and Sam Tarley pulls a Randy Quaid from Independence Day and sacrifices himself to blow up the swarm, and Patrick Wilson and Halle Berry land back on Earth and everybody lives happily ever after. Well, apart from the billions of people killed by fires, floods, earthquakes, asteroid strikes and suffocation from having the atmosphere literally ripped away into space. Not to mention the billions more rendered homeless by massive global destruction of every major city, or the billions more beyond that that will almost certainly die from starvation and disease due to the world's livestock, viable farmland and critical infrastructure being entirely destroyed, thus dooming humanity to a new dark age of brutal survival where all semblance of law and order has broken down.
What? I see this as an absolute win.
You know, when I think about Roland Emmerich movies over the past few decades, I see them as basically a race to the bottom, endlessly mining the same basic ideas until eventually he hits creative bedrock, which he did quite a long time ago. Now don't get me wrong, Universal Soldier, Stargate and Independence Day are fun movies if you're willing to shut down your thinking meat for a couple of hours, and even 2012 was kinda worth it for the sheer over-the-top spectacle. Generally speaking, I've got nothing against big dumb disaster movies, but Moonfall is a whole different level of stupid. A film so brain-meltingly dumb, so devoid of originality, so riddled with cliches that for the first hour I genuinely thought it was some kind of parody. I kept waiting for punchlines and payoffs that never arrived, and slowly the horrifying realization crept in. Oh my god, this is actually supposed to be a serious film. The script actually expects you to buy into the insanity getting hurled at the screen. It expects you to be invested in its cardboard cutout characters, melodramatic family conflicts and paper-thin motivations. It actually thinks you'll care when CGI cities get destroyed for the 100th time by CGI tidal waves and asteroids. Jesus, it even tries to delve into big pretentious questions about the origins of human life, the dangers of artificial intelligence, and the purpose of our own existence. It's like watching a toddler trying to give you their deep and meaningful thoughts on existentialism. And what's really sad here is that this black hole of career destruction seems to have sucked in some pretty talented actors. Patrick Wilson is good at what he does, but fuck me, he's been in some absolute stinkers in his time, and Moonfall may just be the worst of the lot. He looks bored and embarrassed just to be here, and I can't say I blame him. That's what happens when you sign on to a movie without reading the script, I guess. John Bradley continues the winning trend of former Game of Thrones actors trying and failing to break into Hollywood stardom by appearing in terrible big budget movies. I mean, unlike Emilia Clarke in Genesis, at least I can't accuse him of playing a role that he's not suited to. Like I said earlier, he's basically playing a modern day Samuel Tarly, with all the exact same mannerisms and personality quirks. Wow, what an inspired piece of casting. Donald Sutherland shows up for an absolutely baffling cameo that I can only assume was motivated by a very hefty paycheck. But probably the biggest waste of talent is Halle Berry, who's far too good for a movie like this. Well, I mean, she did star in Catwoman and Die Another Day, so draw your own conclusions, I guess. Ultimately, Moonfall feels like some weird relic from a different time, some rejected screenplay from 15 years ago, rescued from a dusty filing cabinet and rushed into production for no other reason than because there was literally nothing else left. And really, it plays like an unimaginative rehash of other, better Roland Emmerich movies. A film that almost certainly started as a series of cool set pieces strung together by a weak as fuck plot, from a director who made a career out of spectacle rather than substance, and is still trying to cut it in a market where almost every major movie does spectacle bigger and better than he ever did. A film that probably never should have been made in the first place, and almost definitely isn't worth 2 hours of your time. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.